The events of this story begin in the Duchy of Lavian. In the manor of this duchy, in one of the rooms was the main heroine in the body of a little girl. The maid asked the girl if she wanted to eat, and she with her whole demeanor showed that she did. Then the maid told the main heroine that she was so pretty and didn't even cry. She also noted that the girl seemed very hungry as she had almost finished everything, but she didn't fuss at all, and the maid called her an affectionate baby. At that moment, the heroine understood that she wasn't crying or fussing, not because she was especially kind or affectionate. It was all because this was her third life. At that moment, she thought she couldn't be picky about food at such a young age. After some time, the maid who was looking after her asked when the master would finally give their baby a name. The girl thought, could it be that she still didn't have a name? But she thought it was no big deal since this was already her third life, so it didn't matter whether she had a name or not. This was because in her previous life she was born an unwanted child and died after living an unhappy life. The heroine remembered what her father had told her in one of her lives, that her mother had forced him to keep the girl, so she shouldn't expect him to consider her his child. That's how it turned out that in her first life she was an illegitimate child in a chaebol family. Despite not being a full-fledged heir from birth, her relatives still decided to get rid of her because of the inheritance. It was precisely because of all these bloody actions that she was killed in her first life. In her second life, she was born the illegitimate daughter of a cult leader. Her father was always surprised that the girl didn't cry even at the sight of blood, and this was very interesting to him. He also immediately told her that if she wanted to survive, she would have to try hard in life. The heroine was very happy because at least her second father acted like a real father, though not much. He still spent a decent amount of time with her. The girl, in turn, diligently studied martial arts to earn his approval. But one day, the heroine realized that he had only spared her life on a whim. Once he stepped on his daughter's hand and called her impudent, asking if she could endure it all. The girl was very shocked by such actions, and her father declared that keeping her alive was like passing his martial arts skills to strangers. He also said he would destroy her. All this happened because her father considered his daughter's efforts a threat to his power and banished her. He also called her the devil's daughter. The main heroine fled, realizing that she could no longer use her martial arts skills. However, unaware of this, people from a political faction mercilessly pursued her as the daughter of the cult leader, and in the end the girl found herself at the edge of a cliff with those same people who were chasing her almost catching up. As a result, the heroine had no choice but to throw herself off that cliff to avoid being captured. Thus, due to all these circumstances, her second life ended with a fall from a cliff. At that moment, the main heroine rejoiced that an end had come to her recurring suffering, but suddenly she opened her eyes again and realized she was in a terrible environment. The first thing she thought was what had happened, since she had just fallen off a cliff and didn't understand where she was now. Then she saw a horse standing in front of her and thought, could she be in a stable? And if so, it meant she had been reborn again. The girl felt very sad and wondered how many more times she would be reborn. Then she accepted her fate and thought, since she had been reborn again, she should at least understand the situation she was in. Then the girl noticed she was lying in someone's arms. Later, she looked more closely and realized that this woman was probably her mother in this life. The heroine wondered what situation this woman was in and why she ended up in such a place with a newborn child. Suddenly, the girl heard someone enter the room. She immediately noticed this person and realized it was a man, but she still couldn't understand why he was staring at her so intently. For some reason, the main heroine felt very awkward at that moment this happened. When she saw a sad expression on the man's face, in the end it turned out that he was her third father. Recalling all her past lives, the girl wondered if she was once again an illegitimate child. While she was thinking about all this, the man began to approach her. A moment later, he leaned toward the place where the girl was lying and picked her up. The heroine thought at that moment what was happening and where this man was taking her. At the same time, she didn't understand why she suddenly felt so sleepy. On top of that, she still didn't know what true intentions this man who had taken her had. Though she didn't know any of this, she knew for sure that she had already been in this house for a month now. She was sitting in the arms of the same maid who had fed her, realizing that she hadn't even died yet. The maid told the girl that she was sure she was disappointed that the master hadn't come, but it was because he was thinking a lot about choosing choosing her name, so she asked her to understand him. The heroine thought she didn't know anything anyway. It turned out that she hadn't seen her father again, the one who had brought her to this manor, but in principle, she understood that this didn't bother her much. After all, if she thought about her past lives, it might even be good that he didn't come. This was because in her past lives her fathers treated her poorly. She also realized that if things continued like this, it would be much better than in her previous lives if it stayed this way and she could grow up peacefully and become independent. It would be simply wonderful. Suddenly, the girl's thoughts were interrupted by a noise. She heard several maids burst into the room and addressed Miss Radiate, who was holding the girl, but two of the girls couldn't just walk in and fell to the floor together. Along with them, a red-haired woman entered the room. She immediately declared, "Just look at those two. Didn't I tell them to come in one at a time?" The main heroine thought at that moment what was happening and who this woman was. The maid holding the baby said it had gotten so noisy. Then she addressed Lillian, Hexa, and Perry and asked what they were doing here. One of the fallen girls finally got up and joyfully announced that the master had finally chosen a name for their baby. She further said that he decided to name her Bless Fawn Lavian. The main heroine thought, what was this Lavian? She also realized it was something new to her, but she seemed to have heard it somewhere. The red-haired maid addressed the girl and said though late she still welcomed her. She introduced herself, saying she was a servant of the Lavian family and her name was Perry. The heroine thought, where had she heard that name before? Another maid with dark hair said her name was Hexa. She also said with a smile that the little girl's father would arrive soon. And the last maid introduced herself, saying her name was Lillian. She noted that when the master arrived, he would introduce the girl to her older sister Elena. The main heroine thought, what was that? Could she really have an older sister? While she listened to all these names, her mind was swirling with thoughts about where she had heard them. Suddenly, she remembered that these were all names from a story called Everyone Loves Me. So, if the girl had been reborn as Bless, then Elena von Lavian was the villainess who was executed for tormenting the main heroine, and it turned out that this girl was her half-sister. Recalling this horrifying story, the girl burst into tears. The maid holding her looked at her and asked what was wrong. It turned out that in the original story, the Lavian family was destroyed because of their connection to the villainess by the main hero. So, in the end, this life would also be unsuccessful for the main heroine. That's why she cried so loudly across the room, and the maid asked what had happened to the miss. With great sadness, the girl thought that if a god existed, he definitely hated her. Sometime later, the maid Radiate stood by the main heroine's crib. She looked closely at the girl and thought she was glad that the miss looked quite lively. She also understood that the girl should grow up strong and healthy, all because she was the miss. Suddenly, she extended her finger to the baby and the girl grabbed it, smiling. Before that, this maid had gone to the master and asked why he hadn't given the young lady a name. He in turn asked why the maid was asking about all this. After that, the maid said that he had called her Bless. Then she noted that he didn't even come to see her yet gave her such a blessed name. The maid asked, wasn't that strange? Her interlocutor said that when he asked that question, he meant he didn't want to hear anything about this child. He then told Radiate that it was the same as when they first met. It turned out she was acting as if she knew everything. The maid apologized to the master, saying she was sorry it turned out this way with Lady Shisa. Her interlocutor immediately told her to stop saying that, but she in turn noted that he had wanted the miss to resemble Lady Shisa. Suddenly, the man slammed his fist on the table and shouted that she must not mention that name in his presence. The maid told him that wouldn't happen, and Master Helios had brought the young lady himself, and if that was the case, he should take responsibility for her. He didn't respond and immediately sank into his memories. He recalled the words of the woman who gave birth to the girl one day. She said that if they had a girl, she would name her Bless. She added that the name would mean blessing. Then, with a smile, she told the man that he would protect this child when it was born. She said this because he would be the most important person to her. Suddenly, the maid interrupted his memories and said they needed to go and he should look at his daughter. She also noted that he shouldn't regret this, as had happened with Shisa. The girl in turn recalled the plot of the story Everyone Loves Me. The main heroine in the fantasy novel ruled over everyone around her. She turned this world into a reverse harem with male heroes. It turned out to be a fairy tale where all the characters loved and cherished the main heroine. The girl remembered that this work was her favorite, which which she had reread multiple times in her first life. She didn't enjoy reading it much back then. She loved it so much because of the unexpected plot twists and charming heroes who didn't know what to do, but that didn't mean she wanted to end up in this world. Still, it turned out that she was obsessed with this novel, from who the male protagonists were to their pasts and futures. Perhaps she could even save the Lavian family from complete destruction according to the plot, but she didn't want to interfere in all this. She just didn't want to be crushed again when she hoped so much. And especially, she didn't want to do anything good for her third father who had neglected her. The girl remembered that not only her father neglected her, but her sister did too. It turned out that her sister Elena was the eldest daughter of the Lavian family. She was the villainess who tormented not only the main heroine, but also her sister, the illegitimate daughter. Bless. In other words, for the girl, she was quite a thorn in her side. Recalling the plot, Elena said, could this illegitimate child really be her younger sister? It was simply a disgrace. Then she addressed the girl and told Bless to listen. She had no sister, so she should behave well. In the end, it turned out that Bless suffered greatly from the taunts of her greedy older sister, and later, she even died because of her cruel actions. The heroine thought no matter how you looked at it, this whole family was of no use to her, so now she didn't understand why she had to endure all these troubles. After all, if she left, no one would even notice. She thought she needed to save up money and then leave before the Lavian family was completely destroyed. At that moment, the maid Radiate stood looking at the girl. She delighted said that their miss was full of energy again. The maid picked up the baby and asked if she was late, apologizing for it. The heroine knew that this kind girl was called Radiate and she was her personal maid. The maid looked at the girl and said that their miss was so calm, just like her mother. The heroine thought, did she mention her mother? So she knew her. She also noted that judging by everything, she was the senior among all these maids, and if so, she had probably been in this duchy for a long time. The main heroine understood that her personal maid wasn't bothered by the fact that she was an illegitimate child, but now she didn't understand why someone like Radiate was on her side. At that moment, the maid asked if the miss was still hungry. Then she looked out the window and said that the weather was quite wonderful today. She asked the baby if she would like to go for a walk now, and the girl, with her joyful response, agreed to it. After that, they all went outside together. The main heroine thought that this was her first time here since she arrived at the Duke's house, and she realized that this house was indeed very large. The head maid told the girl that she would love to show her the place she belonged to. She added that it was a great honor to serve the best duchy in the empire. The baby thought that was obvious. In this empire of Rias, since its founding, there have been 4 ducal families. Rias was the royal family with the current dragon blood, the Lavian family capable of healing any ailment. There was also the Ed family, the strongest in poisons. The Gold family was blessed by spirits, and the Acetal family was eternally shrouded in mist. It turned out that each of these families had its own specialty. While the heroine was thinking about this, she suddenly realized that this body must also have some ability. Perhaps the healing power of the Lavians flowed through her veins, and while the girl was thinking about all this, the maid said they had finally arrived. The baby looked up and saw a huge statue of a man with a sword. Radiate asked, wasn't it wonderful? As she wanted to show this statue to the girl. Looking closely at it, the girl thought that this man looked very much like Helios. The maid immediately said that this man before her was the first Lavian. The baby thought so it wasn't Helios. The maid said that this man really resembled the current duke and asked if the girl thought so too. After that, they stood together, closely examining the statue of the first Lavian before them. At that moment, someone addressed Radiate and asked who this was. It was a man who asked if this was really the illegitimate daughter brought by Duke Lavian. He further asked if the Duke's maids hadn't been properly educated. Otherwise, he couldn't understand why they didn't dare to block his path. Suddenly, the head maid told Lillian to step aside. The girl obeyed her, and they all bowed to the man, greeting him. In doing so, they named this man, and it was Duke Heinrich von Ed. The heroine, hearing this name, thought, could it really be that Heinrich? She immediately recalled the final dark scene in the original story, so it was probably the same Heinrich von Ed as back then. The girl remembered that in the original story, this man was described as an obsessive character. He also achieved his desires at any cost. As a result, he was one of those who used Elena to destroy the Lavian family. The heroine didn't understand what such a dark figure was doing in the Lavian manor. Suddenly, the man said, said that this girl was his niece. Hearing this, the main heroine was slightly shocked. She immediately thought, could Heinrich really be Bless's uncle? If so, her mother must have been from the Ed family. The baby realized that if she was this villain's niece, it could be important. After all, there were no such details in the original story. At that moment, the head maid addressed the young master. She told the man that he couldn't just appear before them without warning. Her interlocutor asked if he really had to announce when he wanted to see his niece. He said he would listen to the maid and do so next time. After that, he smiled and said that in any case, the purpose of his visit today had been achieved. After all, he was curious because he had heard that this girl looked very much like his younger sister. At that moment, the man tried to touch the girl with his hand. The main heroine immediately thought, what happened? Did he just touch her? The head maid quickly pulled the girl away from him and addressed Master Heinrich. Right after that, she told him that she wouldn't allow such nonsense anymore. After all, this was their young lady, not this man's niece. Her interlocutor said it seemed the Lavian maid didn't know how to address her superiors. The maid noted that this only happened when the young master crossed the line. He smiled in response and said that this time he would leave, but he warned that next time they should be careful and for now they should look after his niece. Suddenly, the maid addressed the baby and apologized to her. The girl didn't understand and thought, what was she talking about? Suddenly, she felt something was wrong with her condition and she could hardly breathe. The heroine realized that no matter what her life was, she just hated being sick. She tried not to pay attention to the pain for others until her condition became truly dire, and in the end, she was left only to regret that she had dreamed of family affection. That's why she really hated being sick. Suddenly, Radiate addressed her again and told the miss to just believe that it was all for her. The baby looked closely at her and thought she didn't know what that meant, but this girl was the only one who had been kind to her. That's why she wanted to believe in all this. At that very moment, the main heroine's father was lying in his manor. At the same time, various thoughts were running through his head. He was thinking that Shisa was his only blessing, and at the same time, a person sent by the Ed family to bring about his downfall. He recalled how one day he addressed his beloved and said that it must have been funny to her when he played along. He also called her Shisa, meaning she was Roxiel Fawn Ed. The man realized that nothing happy had started from the moment he learned who his beloved was. That same day, the girl apologized to Helios for deceiving him. Then, with a smile and tears in her eyes, she said that despite her mission, she had fallen in love with him with all her heart. She also noted that her feelings were truly sincere, and she wanted to be happy with him and their child. The man knew that she was already pregnant with their child then, but the feeling of betrayal toward him was heavier than that fact. He then told her how he could believe someone who had deceived him all this time. He noted that now all her words seemed like mere pretense. His beloved cried out to Helios that it wasn't true, but the man immediately responded that he didn't want to see her and told her to return to the Ed family. After all this, several months passed since their separation. As a result, Shisa had vanished without a trace. The Ed family also informed the man that her whereabouts were unknown. Helios immediately thought, where could a woman with a child in her womb have gone? And he absolutely had to find her. As a result of his search, he reached that very stable and wondered where his Shisa was. He begged himself that she be okay. A moment later, he opened the stable door, and what he saw shocked him. There he saw his beloved Shisa lying unconscious. He approached the girl's body and felt some strange energy. He sensed that it was indeed the poison of the Ed family. He thought, could her brother Heinrich really have killed his younger sister like this? Then he thought he couldn't be mistaken, and it was definitely Heinrich who killed her. He couldn't understand how things had turned out this way, but he realized it was his fault. This was because he was the one who had driven her out of the house. After brief reflection, he immediately looked at the girl lying next to the woman. He instantly recalled the words of his beloved. She had told him before that if they had a girl, she would want to name her Bless. At that very moment, the man came to himself. In his manner, cold sweat was on his face, and getting up, he realized it was that same terrible dream again. He also understood that all this had really happened in his past. No matter how much he regretted it, Shisa could never be brought back. Suddenly, the head maid addressed Master Helios. The man told Radiate that he kept telling her not to do this. The girl was persistent and immediately interrupted him, saying it was really important. It turned out that Miss Bless had recently been poisoned. This shocked her interlocutor even more. Right after that they went to the baby together, the maid said that the girl had finally fallen asleep. She then told the man that her condition worsened after Master Heinrich's visit, and now she was completely sure that the Duke had done something to the little miss. She also said that if they left it like this, it could be really dangerous. The father stood looking at his daughter, turning thoughts over in his head. At that moment, he was thinking about this man named Heinrich. It turned out that killing Shisa like a sick horse wasn't enough for him. Helios didn't understand how this man dared to encroach on what was left of her, and it turned out he even dared to try to kill Shisa's daughter. This made him very angry, and he immediately addressed Radiate. The girl in turn asked what the master wanted from her. He noted was this all part of her plan too. The same plan as the day she chose him as the head of the family. The maid immediately told the master that it was a long time ago. She further noted that what was important now was something else, as they needed to save the young lady. It turned out that no matter how much he had done for Lavian, he understood that he couldn't handle it all alone after all the power of the four main ducal families neutralized each other. As a result, the man asked if the maid realized what needed to be done. She, with a smile, said she knew a very simple way. She then said that all that was needed was to bring dragon blood, that is the blood of the royal family. Her interlocutor was shocked by what he heard. It turned out that the Emperor of Rias was called a dragon. They say his blood contained power beyond humans. So foolish and greedy people craved to possess it, but the end for those who sought to possess dragon blood was always the same death. The man asked if dragon blood could really help her. The head maid told the master that it was indeed so. At the same time, the Duke thought of Shisa and that he still didn't understand what happiness she had spoken of before. But mentally he promised that he would protect the blessing she had left him. He then said he was heading to the imperial family and thought he would protect his daughter Bless. And so, in the middle of the night, he arrived at the imperial palace. The main heroine's father walked angrily through the manor, thinking that the emperor must be in his office. Now he clenched his fist, thinking there was no choice, as Lavian would have to submit in exchange for dragon blood. He also understood that if he could save Shisa's blood, it would be simply wonderful. While he walked and thought about all this, someone addressed him and interrupted his thoughts. It was a boy who said, "What a coincidence to meet Duke Lavian here." This person also noted that what the Duke needed wasn't there. The Duke saw that this person was a boy who asked if he was also looking for dragon blood. This boy was named Eldian Say Noah Rias, and he was the third heir prince of the Rias Empire. The man immediately thought, could this be the third prince? And did the young prince inherit the power of the royal family's blood? He then told the boy that if he knew what he desired, the heir prince could give it to him. He asked what the boy wanted from him. Eldian told the Duke that he quite liked his quick thinking. The Duke noted that love for children was some unfamiliar feeling to him. The young prince, with a smile, told him that for starters they should go to the Duke's manor and save his precious daughter. The main heroine's sister followed her father, looking at him. She thought, where was her father going at such a time? Then she ran to the room he frequently visited. She thought that lately he had been coming there often. She wondered if there was really something important there. Then she opened the door to the room and saw a child before her. The girl was lying there crying with a rather sickly appearance. The girl approached the crib where the baby lay. She looked closely at her and thought what a red face she had. Could it be a cold? She immediately addressed the baby and asked if she was sick. The sister also thought that in such moments, if she could only control the Lavian family's power, she could heal her instantly. Instead, she decided to just stay by her side, as when someone is sick and alone, they feel very lonely. Then she addressed the baby and asked if she wanted her to sing a song, and she began singing about how the baby shouldn't cry, as her mother would love her wherever she was. At the moment she was singing the song, she heard footsteps approaching. She immediately panicked and thought, what should she do after all? If they found out she was wandering here at night, she'd be in serious trouble. Suddenly she saw a wardrobe and decided she could definitely hide there. After that, she climbed inside there. She sat quietly and only heard talk of the Duke's precious child and gratitude for kindness. The girl realized that the voice definitely belonged to her father. After some time, the heroine's sister realized they had finally left, which was good. She also understood that she didn't know what they were talking about, but she didn't think the precious daughter of her father was her. After that, she climbed out of the wardrobe and ran to The baby's crib. There she saw the baby who had woken up and thought, could this daughter be the one her father loves? The girl in turn also looked closely at her sister. Elena noticed that her younger sister's eyes were the same deep purple as her father's, while hers were much lighter. She realized that this girl was quite beautiful. She added that her father never came to see her, but he came to this child. The girl asked why her father didn't come to see Elena too. She wondered if it was because Elena didn't look like him. While she was asking all this, her face was very sad and tears streamed from her eyes. She further asked if perhaps if she tried harder her father would come to her too. After that, she sat by her younger sister's crib and noted that she also hoped her father would love her. Sometime later, the main heroine was lying in her crib. She was very thoughtful at that moment and thought that 2 weeks had passed since she arrived here, but in that short time she had already faced the biggest crisis of her life. At that moment, her older sister was by her crib telling her a story. She said that's why their father was the strongest mage in the empire and asked if that wasn't amazing. The heroine thought it wasn't interesting at all, as these were all stories about Helios. The baby just lay there begging her to stop already. The heroine understood that when she woke up from the egg poison, 2 major changes had occurred. One of these changes was that this child, her older sister, started coming to her. Looking closely at this girl, the heroine had no doubts. After all, she had black hair and light purple eyes. It turned out that this was Elena, the villainess from the original story of the novel. Elena von Lavian was the daughter of the late Duchess and Bless's half-sister. In the original novel's plot, she was described as an arrogant and evil woman thanks to the influence of a member of the ducal family, Heinrich. She was closer to him than to her father, Helios. And so the main heroine lay there unable to even imagine that Elena actually loved her father so much. After all the stories the girl came to tell her were only about her father. The main heroine understood that now that she was in this world, she realized she didn't know much about these characters she had read about. The girl understood that she simply couldn't allow the tragic ending due to a bad choice. But if that happened, all her expectations and plans for the future would be meaningless. While the baby was thinking about all this, Elena addressed her. She said she had actually seen their father leaving this place recently. She also noted that she was jealous of her because they saw each other too often. The younger sister thought that was indeed true. It turned out that the second major change was exactly this. After all, her father Helios had also started appearing before her. It turned out that he came again and looked closely at the girl. After some time, he turned and silently left. The heroine thought with surprise, what did he even come for? The girl knew that this man came, silently looked at her, and then just left. At that moment, the girl simply didn't know what he wanted, and while she was thinking about all this, she suddenly wanted to sleep very badly. But her peace was disturbed again by her older sister. She noted to the girl that everyone said she shouldn't meet with their father. Perhaps it was because he didn't want to see her, but she really wanted to see him. The sister also began to reflect that perhaps it was because she was her mother's daughter. After all, it seemed to her that her mother and father had a rather bad relationship. Elena asked what she should do in such a situation. The heroine looked closely at her and recalled that she had once asked if her father would ever accept her. The main heroine realized something at that moment. It turned out she hadn't noticed before, but Elena also wanted to be loved by her parents. It was exactly the same as the girl in her past lives. The girl immediately thought, why didn't she know this before? After all, just as Helios was indifferent to her, he also didn't give enough attention to Elena. It turned out that this was her third life, so she had given up on the desire to be loved by her parents. But if Elena fell for Heinrich and became a villainess, it would only be because of her father Helios's indifference. The heroine immediately tried to push these thoughts away. She thought to herself that she shouldn't think about this and should only think about herself. Suddenly, her sister touched her cheek and said it was good that she could talk about their father. She also noted to the baby that she would come to her, so she asked her not to forget her. The heroine thought how tired she was of lying here all day. That's why it wasn't so bad to listen to Elena's stories before she left, and she wondered if that was right. After that, she grabbed the girl's finger with her tiny hand. Her sister was very happy about this turn of events, and the heroine thought everything would be fine if she kept doing this. Joyfully, she asked if her little sister was holding her hand. At that moment, a strange man in glasses peeked into the room. For a short time, he watched what was happening in the room, then turned and said it was just some spoiled child. At the same time, a new, rather interesting topic for gossip appeared in high society. One woman asked her interlocutors if they had heard the story between Lavian and Ed. Her interlocutor asked if Duke Ed had really tried to poison the illegitimate daughter of Duke Lavian. She was immediately told that they say the Duke himself neutralized the poison. They asked if he was really trying to accept this child as his official heir. That's why the main heroine understood that the first piece of news was the illegitimate child of the Lavian family. People also discussed whether anyone had heard about the second prince, but someone asked, didn't he die in a carriage accident? It turned out that out of 6 heirs, only 4 remained. Because of this, the second topic for gossip was who would become the emperor's successor. In the imperial palace, Eldian was pushed by his brother. Then, with sarcasm and a smile, he said it turned out to be a person, not a sack, as he had expected. He then shouted that when he saw him, he didn't recognize him as he looked so good on the floor, like some garbage sack. This boy was the first prince named Rizal Se Enoarias. The boy immediately got up and told his brother that it really hurt. His interlocutor immediately noted that he was still talking about his brother. He added that if he really didn't want to die, he shouldn't even think about it. He asked if he thought he didn't know that he was ignoring him in front of their father, pretending he didn't exist. Eldian told his brother that he had never done anything like that. After all, it was just some misunderstanding between them. Suddenly, his interlocutor interrupted him and shouted that it was too noisy. He asked if the boy thought that by attracting their father's attention, he had achieved everything. He then said that he simply didn't understand what could happen to him next. His brother tried to respond to this, but he immediately grabbed him by the clothes, told him to shut up, and lifted him slightly. He also noted that he should lie on the floor his whole life like this. He noted that he shouldn't even think about taking his place and asked if he understood all this. Then he shouted for him to get lost and threw him to the floor. It was quite painful, and his brother let out a small cry. After that, Eldian looked at his departing brother. He then said that he had quite a temper. Suddenly, a boy approached him from behind and said that this person was real trash. The prince looked at him and noted that it was Lamir. This boy was Eldian's servant. The prince, getting up, noted that despite everything, he tried to behave with dignity, but his interlocutor immediately said that it was even more disgusting. After all, if he weren't an heir prince, he would have done something to him. But suddenly the boy said that everything was fine. He asked what about the thing he had recently asked him to find out. His subordinate noted that the child was doing well. It turned out she had handled the dragon blood. The prince, hearing this, asked if it was really so. Then he smiled and said it was simply wonderful. The servant asked His Highness why he had made a deal with Lavian. After all, Helios was quite an unpredictable person, but the prince noted that there was no choice. After all, he couldn't resist the thought of getting a magical sword, and so nothing in this world could stop him. A few days earlier, interesting events were taking place in the Duchy of Lavian. At that time, the Duke brought the young prince to share his dragon blood with the baby. At that moment, Eldian cut his finger and dripped blood onto the forehead of the baby lying in the crib. Then the boy said that the girl would still need dragon blood in the future, but for now they had overcome this crisis. He then told the man that he was ready to provide a steady supply of blood if the Duke agreed to his deal. The Duke in turn asked what he wanted in return. The prince said that only 2 things mattered to him. First, it was the magical sword that the man wielded. He asked him to promise that he would give it to the boy. The Duke was surprised by such a strange request and immediately said that this sword was no ordinary one. His interlocutor interrupted him and said that he knew everything. It turned out that the sword was under Lavian protection because it drove its owner mad. He added that this was why he, a great mage, would control it. After receiving the sword, this would continue until the time came to keep it in his duchy. The prince then said that his body couldn't withstand such a burden now. That's why he asked the man to come to him until he became an adult. This request was the second condition of their deal. The Duke said that it was all a game with an unlikely favorable outcome, but Eldian noted that the Duke shouldn't worry about all this. It turned out that what he needed to think about now was only the dragon blood the boy was providing. After all, only it could neutralize the Ed poison. Then the boy turned to him and asked if the Duke agreed to his deal. The man in turn thought that the Lavian sword was indeed a completely secret item. It turned out that he didn't know how the boy found out about it, but his answer was obvious. Then he bowed to the young master and thanked him for the successful exchange. Eldian also said he was grateful for it. It turned out that at the moment when the struggle for the imperial throne was at its peak, the third Prince Eldian had no serious allies. It turned out that the attempt to gain the magical sword was a desire to gain an advantage in this struggle. The Duke understood that before keeping the promise made to the young master, he needed to resolve several internal issues. It also turned out that he needed to hurry and prepare for all this. At that time, a family meeting was held in the Lavian household. The man announced his plans, and his subordinates noted that it was simply unthinkable. They asked how he could give the Western Wing to an illegitimate child. After all, wasn't it a historical place built by the first head of the house? One of the men told the Lord that the very decision to accept an illegitimate child was already disrespectful to the family, and if they were talking about the Western Wing, it was a very high honor for her. Other members of the meeting supported the man's statement. One of them said that if this was because of Ed's interference, there were other ways to resolve it. Then, with a cold gaze and cold speech, the Duke joined the conversation. He said that all this was indeed strange. He asked if they really had the authority to discuss his own daughter's place of residence. Hearing these words, the men broke out in a cold sweat. The leader continued, saying that if they called his daughter illegitimate and looked down on her, he would take it as a challenge to the head of the Lavian house. As a result, he stood up from his chair and said that those who were dissatisfied could speak up right now before him. If such people appeared, his personal sword would cut out their tongues. A moment later, he told them to remember this. Well, it turned out that his child was named Bless Fawn Lavian. After a short time, the main heroine, along with her personal maid, stood near the manor. The maid asked if this was really the place where the miss would live. She also asked Sir Valentine if he was joking. Hearing this, the heroine thought that she wasn't the only one who found it's strange. Suddenly, Harold Fawn Valentine said that the Duke had personally transferred the management of the Western Wing to his daughter, and he wasn't joking at all. He also noted that this would be announced at the Council of Elders, so they shouldn't worry, the head maid thought. What were these things? Though, of course, she hadn't thought that the room where the miss was would be her nursery. A few days ago, when she was near the baby, the Duke entered the room. He immediately said that this couldn't continue. He then said that his daughter couldn't stay here forever and needed to change rooms now. At that moment, the maid was already horrified, thinking she would be sent to some storage room. But now she stood in front of the building and thought, who would give a whole building to a child? She also wondered if Duke Helios had truly gone mad to do such a thing. Harold immediately said that he thought the master wanted to use this opportunity to strengthen the Mrs. position. He wanted to do it even in such an unusual way. He noted that he simply couldn't believe he was giving away such a historical place. The heroine was shocked and thought, what was this historical place? She also couldn't understand what had happened to change the man's opinion while she was asleep. Though it was good for her, it was still quite burdensome. The man suggested to the head maid that they enter the house. At that moment, the heroine thought that her sister Elena didn't know she had moved. She also thought that these days she had almost stopped coming to her, so she was curious if the girl was okay now. And just then her older sister came to her room and was surprised that no one was there. She immediately asked where the baby was, as she was sure she had been there recently. While the girl stood thinking about this, a man addressed her and said he thought she'd be here again. Hearing this voice, Elena realized it was the butler. This man was named Igos Radius, and he was Elena's personal butler. After that, he approached the girl and took her by the shoulder. He asked if the miss understood why she couldn't come here. The frightened girl said that she was a member of the Ed family and had to fulfill her mother's will, and it turned out she shouldn't get close to the Lavian family. The man told her not to forget this. He also asked if she would fulfill Ed's will. The girl immediately said that of course she would do it. The butler, with a smile, exclaimed that it was good that she understood all this. Then he stood up and said that the child this girl was looking for had moved to the western wing. He also noted that she seemed to care about her, so he had prepared a gift for her on this occasion. He also asked if the girl wanted to go to her. Elena immediately smiled and asked if it was true and if she could do it. The man immediately smirked wickedly and said that of course it was true. It turned out he had prepared something very cute for her. After that, the butler left the girl's room and angrily punched the wall. He thought that this woman named Shisa was causing problems even after her death. He thought that this illegitimate child was a very serious obstacle. He was also curious that it seemed the blood of the Ed family flowed in her too, and judging by everything, Duke Lavian had started to take very good care of her. Then he looked at the toy and thought that there was nothing terrible. After all, it wasn't like there was no way out now. He also noted that they would see if one happy accident would help them. He looked at the rabbit toy and it was clear that it emanated malicious energy. Sometime later, the older sister finally visited the younger one with her gift. She showed the rabbit and told the baby that it was her gift for the move. Seeing it, the baby was very happy. The main heroine also thought that though they hadn't seen each other for a while, her sister had come to her in the western wing. Though the girl was worried that something might have happened to her, she was now very joyful. Suddenly, Elena asked the baby if their father had come to her today. The heroine thought, here we go again with talk about her father Helios. She also decided that if she thought about it, it was strange, as he usually came to her by this time. The older sister noted that if their father was here, she wouldn't have been able to give her the gift. After all, he didn't like it when the girl came to her. It turned out that unlike the baby, she was her mother's daughter. Then with sadness, she noted that the baby was so pretty. After all, surprised, the main heroine looked at her. Elena immediately apologized for saying such strange things, as she could just talk to her about everything. The main heroine also thought that Elena believed their father hated her, and it turned out that she wanted to be loved by him. On top of that, she recalled that she was just like the girl in her past life who wanted to earn her father's love. Suddenly, the older sister addressed the girl and asked if the toy was beautiful. She noted that it was the butler who had prepared it for the girl, and as a result, he even allowed her to come here this time. A few moments later, the girl told the baby that she had to go and added that she would return next time. Then they waved to each other and parted. At that moment, the main heroine thought that Elena looked quite lonely. It turned out that she wished her older sister and Helios could become even a little closer. After all, it worried her because she was so similar to her in her past life. Suddenly, the head maid Radiate entered the room. She asked the main heroine if they had a good time with Miss Elena. The girl was happy to see her and wondered how this girl always knew when to leave. After all, it was only thanks to her actions that Elena could come to her freely. The maid immediately looked at the gift that her older sister had brought. Then she picked it up, looked at it closely, and said that the girl had received a nice gift, but she wasn't looking at it just like that, as she understood something was wrong with it. Then the girl said that Master Duke would come soon and she should wait for him a little. The baby immediately started crying and thought that she wasn't waiting for him at all. To calm her, Radiate immediately picked the girl up. At that moment, the heroine thought that it was quite reasonable for her maid to be mistaken like this. After all, Helios had been visiting her every day since she moved. While she was thinking about all this, the Duke himself entered. After that, the man took his daughter in his arms and began reading her a fairy tale. At that moment, the heroine thought that something had changed in him when he gave her this wing, but she hadn't expected these changes to be so significant. The main heroine simply couldn't believe that he was personally reading her fairy tales. The girl also understood that it was clear that something had happened while she was sick. She looked at her father's face and thought that he was still a stranger to her. After a short time, the man said that they should probably stop for today. After all, the girl had no choice but to agree to all this. He noted that when she learned to speak, she could tell him what she needed. The girl thought at that moment that it was really hard to get used to all this. It turned out that this book was a gift for her. That's why she was worried, as it was the first time in all her lives that she had received a gift from her family personally. Now the heroine understood that this was the feeling when someone thought of her and cared for her. When the baby thought about Helios at their first meeting, she definitely couldn't have imagined something like this. Suddenly the Duke asked the head maid if Elena had come to the girl today. The heroine was surprised by the man's question. The maid immediately said that she had come and left just before his arrival. The girl was shocked by this conversation and thought, did he really know about all this? Then the man told Bless that they didn't talk about her older sister. Then, with a smile, he noted that it would be wonderful if he could officially introduce them, but that child felt uncomfortable in his presence. That's why she didn't come to them when he was there. The main heroine thought, what was he saying? After all, Elena thought that Helios simply hated her. That's why it seemed to her that she was always waiting for her father to pay her at least some attention. But Helios felt the same as Elena. That's why the girl understood that they weren't close to each other because of a misunderstanding between them. The maid asked the Duke if they should prepare a separate table. He boldly told them that it wasn't necessary as he didn't want to burden them. The heroine knew that Helios definitely didn't seem friendly at their first meeting, but now she knew that he was definitely someone who could take care of his family. She also understood that Elena was still very young, so she hoped for her father's love and care. The girl still didn't know the details of their relationship, but so far they hadn't managed to spend time together. She understood that, unlike her past life, they could become a real family. Now the heroine thought, could she do something for them? After all, it might be too presumptuous, but she would like them to be happy with each other even when she left them. Sometime later, the man stood up and told Radiate that he would be absent for a while on his business. The girl asked if it was because of preparations for the meeting with the third prince. The man told her that it was so for now. They needed to take care of Bless. The head maid smiled, then bowed, and told him not to worry about it. After all, as long as she was with Miss Bless, nothing would happen, and she would be safe. The Duke immediately noted that he hoped these weren't empty words. After these words, he immediately left the room. The red-haired maid said that their master had changed a lot, perhaps even a bit more than she had seen in her dreams. Her interlocutor said that it was so, as this child had done more than they had even expected. Then the maid addressed Radiate and asked about the toy that Elena had brought. She asked if everything was okay with it. The girl asked if she was talking about the toy that Miss Elena had brought. If that was the case, it seemed that knowing the master would be absent, Miss Elena's butler decided it was time to act. It turned out that he had temporarily suppressed the toy's energy so that Helios wouldn't notice anything, but it was only a matter of time before that power would break free again. But she noted that the maid shouldn't worry, as Miss Bless would easily handle it. This was because if she couldn't solve even this problem, she would die anyway. After a short time, the Duke went to the magical cave. When he passed through the barrier, he saw a stone with a sword inside. He understood that before him was the legendary sword sealed by the first Lavian. Those who sought to obtain this sword faced their inner struggles and fears. That's why they went mad, consumed by the sword's energy. The man understood that if it weren't for the deal with the heir prince, he would never have come to this place. He also wondered if the prince really wanted to use this sword to strengthen his position. He was also curious if the third prince could control this immense power. Suddenly his thoughts were interrupted by something he felt. He immediately asked what it was. After all, he felt some new magical influence on the barrier in the western wing. These events took place 10 minutes earlier in the Duchy of Lavian. Elena told the butler that she had finally finished her homework. The man said it was excellent work. The girl immediately asked if she could now go visit the baby. The butler said that first they should check if she had learned her lesson. Well, the girl joyfully said let it be so, and he could ask her anything. The man said that they say Lavians are born with strong magical abilities from generation to generation, so he asked at what age she thought the path to mana opened. Elena said from 3 in early cases to 8 in late cases. Her interlocutor said that was correct. Then he had the next question. What would happen if mana was forced to awaken in a newborn child? The girl immediately said that an uncontrollable amount would be released, putting the child's life in danger. Even if they survived, they wouldn't be able to use magic for the rest of their life. The butler told the girl that it was excellent. He also noted that this was why they could conclude that giving a magic-enhancing artifact disguised as a gift was a classic method of assassination used against a member of a mage family. The girl asked what he meant by disguised disguised as a gift. Her interlocutor with a sly smile continued, saying it was just like the one she had given to the illegitimate child. The girl, frightened, thought, "What did he just say?" The man continued with a sly smile, saying that 2 days had passed since she gave it, so its power should have increased by now. He then told the miss that Lavian had only one heir, and all this was done for her sake. Elena immediately thought, what was he talking about? And could the child die from a mana surge? She also thought, could it really happen because of the toy she had given the baby? At that moment, a girl ran into the baby's room and said they needed to evacuate urgently as an explosion had occurred in the western wing. The older sister in turn thought in panic that this shouldn't happen. After all, she simply couldn't let the baby die because of her, so she immediately got up and ran to her as she had to save her. At that moment, the main heroine came to and thought what had happened. She also realized she couldn't see anything through the smoke. She suddenly felt ill, and then she heard a terrible explosion. It hurt so much that she felt as if her insides had been turned inside out. She also thought that at least in this life she would be much happier. But now she immediately wondered if this time she would die alone again. The heroine realized she was very scared and begged for someone to help her. Suddenly someone called her by name, and she realized it was Helios. The girl looked up and saw that it was indeed her father. The man immediately noted that the girl was okay and said that now everything would be fine. After all, her father was here. After hearing these words, the baby felt a warmth inside and immediately burst into tears. The Duke began to hug the girl tightly at that moment. After hearing the words that her father was here, the main heroine realized that only in her third life did she understand how much hope these words inspired. The man, along with his baby, continued their way out of the ruined building. The girl looked at all this and realized that the entire wing was completely destroyed. She immediately thought, what had happened here? At one point, they heard a girl coughing somewhere. The heroine thought, could that be a child's voice? Suddenly, they heard someone shouting, calling out to the baby. Then their eyes met, and there was the older sister, Elena. She had come to save her younger sister. Then she was shocked as she saw her father before her. The heroine thought, what was her older sister doing here, and where had she come from? The man also asked Elena what she was doing here. The girl wanted to answer something but hesitated. She thought that her father would be very angry because the baby was in danger. Because of her, the Duke noted that it was dangerous here and they should talk later, but his daughter immediately apologized for everything that had happened. Tearful Elena said it was all because of the toy, as the butler had told her something. The heroine, hearing this, thought, could it be because of the toy? And it turned out it was because of that rabbit the butler had given her sister. The heroine also thought that this man had forced a child to do it. The sister, with tears in her eyes, continued to beg for forgiveness, as the toy was so beautiful she had just given it to the baby. The main heroine knew that she wasn't to blame. After all, how could a child craving parental love do something like that? That's why she wanted to say that everything was okay. Suddenly, the father approached his tearful daughter and told Elena that it wasn't her fault at all. He also said that he wasn't scolding her as her father was on her side. He added that the baby was fine, so he asked the girl not to cry. She continued to sob, asking if she was still her father's daughter. The man said she was stating rather obvious things. Right after that, he told Elena von Lavian to come to him. The girl immediately looked at him and saw that he was inviting her for a hug. The older daughter, with tears in her eyes, rushed into her father's arms and hugged him tightly. A moment later, she said she was very sorry that it turned out this way. Then the man addressed Elena and, showing the girl, said that this was her younger sister. After that, he said that this baby was named Bless. He also apologized for introducing her only now. Then he addressed the baby and asked if they should say hello. The older sister was very happy about this event and told the baby, don't be afraid, her name was Elena and she was her older sister. Hearing all this, the main heroine realized what this feeling was. It turned out that because she had always been neglected, she had given up on the desire to be with a loving family. But now the girl felt as if they really wanted to become a family for her. If this time she could be a little greedy, she would at least want to stay with them, stay with the family she had finally found for herself. A few days after this incident, the Western Wing, which had been in disrepair, was restored faster than expected. When Helios imprisoned the butler, Elena was finally freed from his psychological abuse. And now when peace had finally been restored in the Lavian family, the heroine was visited by her father and sister. The older sister asked the younger one if she had missed her sister. The father in turn told them to be careful. And on top of that, something else appeared. Some creature addressed the girl, and she thought, what was it? The creature said that it was Manna. The girl in turn thought, was there such a thing in the original story? She also wondered if it all happened because of her Manna explosion. The heroine didn't think it was dangerous, but she learned something about this strange creature. The first thing was that only she could see it. After all, when they were all together, it addressed the girl and no one saw it. The next thing she noticed was that it could read her thoughts. There was also the fact that the girl definitely liked this creature. In the end, combining all her judgments, she concluded that it wouldn't harm her. Sometime later, the girl addressed the cloud and said that if it was going to follow her constantly, it should have a name. Then she asked the creature how it liked the name Cloud. She was very happy and said that now it finally had a name. She also added that it liked the name Cloud, and now this cloud loved Bless very much. Looking at the joy of this creature, the girl realized that it really liked it. She also looked at her body and realized that a child's body had very limited possibilities. So, if this little one was by her side, it would surely be useful for her future plans. The main heroine immediately thought that from now on she wouldn't just live well alone, but she would stop the Lavian family from falling. The heroine thought that this was really her first true family. She would really want to protect it, not lose it to helplessness. That's why she had to overturn the original plot. But in the original story, she was in love with him and tormented the heroine because of it. The girl understood that perhaps this wasn't the current Elena, but in the original story, she was in love with him and tormented the heroine. Because of it, the girl also knew that she needed to increase the family's influence so that no one would dare threaten Lavian's safety. The privilege of a transmigrator was that she could know the future. The heroine knew that only 20 years remained until the start of the original story, the minds that would develop in the future, the things that would become popular, and the hidden characters. She would use all of it. It turned out that she didn't care, that it was someone else's story. After all, to protect her home and family, she would do everything. A moment later, the main heroine addressed Cloud and asked if it could take her somewhere. The girl understood that the priority was to find this thing in the butler's room. The Duke closely examined the toy that the butler had given the girl. He immediately realized that hidden beneath this toy was an artifact that amplified magical power. He also told the head maid that when he came to Bless's room, he didn't feel anything. Then he addressed Radiate and said he was sure it was she who had hidden the toy's energy. He also asked if she had something to tell him. At that moment, the girl apologized to her master, but the man immediately said that he wasn't asking for ordinary apologies. He added that it was she who had said she could protect Bless, but as soon as he wasn't around, his daughter was in danger. He said that if the maid hadn't hidden the energy of this thing, nothing would have happened, and now he was curious how he could trust her. In response, the head maid noted that it simply couldn't be changed. After all, the Demon King himself would awaken very soon. The man asked what she was talking about. Now the girl continued, saying that to oppose him, the baby needed to awaken her mana as soon as possible. The Duke noted that nothing had been decided yet, and the oracle hadn't even appeared. Angrily, he said there was no need to awaken her like this. He then noted that if she was going to act this way, she should at least let him know. The maid interrupted him and noted that if she had warned him, would he have allowed her to do it? She also told Helios not to be so foolish. She further noted that the imperial family and the 4 founding ducal families existed to restrain the Demon King. The girl was sure that the man knew this better than anyone. It also turned out that Lavian was the demon's greatest enemy. The head maid noted to the master that he needed to support the miss. After all, it was the role they all had to play together. While they were discussing all this, a subordinate burst into the master's room. He immediately told the lord that they had trouble as the prisoner Igos had successfully escaped. The butler had already escaped and was reporting to his master. The master told him that Lavian's security had become even stricter than before. As a result, they even had to use force to get this man out. He also noted that Igos had to prove his usefulness. Frightened, he said he was very sorry. Then the master told him to behave well until he called him. The man bowed to him and said he would do it. Then this man looked at a photo of his sister Shisa and said that her daughter looked very much like her. He thought, was her name really Bless? and it was quite amusing. It turned out that even though he had acted carelessly, it could be noted that the mana surge was very significant. Moreover, this girl survived, and it turned out he had underestimated her, and she was stronger than he thought. The man thought that if she really had the Ed family's power, it could greatly interfere with his future plans. He wondered if he could believe that she was born in Lavian just when his awakening would occur. He also thought that they weren't called their greatest enemies for nothing. It turned out that he would eagerly await the Oracle's appearance in the near future. The main heroine had just reached the butler's room. She found an envelope and said it was quite well hidden. She finally found it, and it contained contact information for a guild that worked with Ed. She knew that in the original story, this guild was deceived by Ed and practically became his hands and feet. It turned out that these people who met the main heroine just before the destruction were miraculously saved. And since they specialized in information, they could be very useful. Suddenly, Cloud flew up to the girl and asked if it had helped her. She noted that Cloud was simply the best. Then the main heroine thought that when she could walk and talk, she would start acting seriously. After all, she would diligently grow and protect her Lavian family. And just after making this decision, time flew by very quickly. 7 years had passed since that moment. The maid addressed the main heroine and said that Lady Elena had come to her. The girl was immediately happy about her sister's arrival. She was still called Bless von Lavian, but she was already 7 years old. The main heroine remembered the original story of the novel Everyone Loves Me. As expected from a reverse harem novel, the appearance of attractive male characters was predictable. That's why Elena's jealousy of the main heroine could be called justified. And then she saw a boy with white hair and blue eyes. He apologized for joking like that, as he just found it very funny how she reacted. He also asked her to wait for him, as he would come back for her soon. Then another boy with yellow hair appeared and told the girl to be careful. He wondered how she could be so clumsy. Also along with them, a brunette appeared and said he wanted to be by her side. Even if she didn't choose him, he wouldn't give up under any circumstances. The girl knew that the main heroine of this novel, named Bella, was surrounded by the love of the main heroes, but these men addressed her by the name Bless. This scared the girl greatly, and she immediately woke up in her bed. Then she got up and thought, was it really a dream? And why did they call her Bless instead of Bella? She also thought, shouldn't they have called the main heroine by her name? Then the heroine began to leave her room and thought that she had a bad feeling when she was almost out of the room. Her older sister addressed her and asked what was wrong with her face. When the heroine looked up, she saw Elena von Lavian, who was now 13 years old. The main heroine immediately rushed into her arms and said she had a nightmare, but when she saw her sister, she felt much better. Her interlocutor asked what kind of nightmare it was. After all, if she had been in her dream, she would have easily dealt with all those offenders. The girl immediately thanked her older sister for her support. It turned out that a lot had changed over these 7 years. The first of these changes was that 2 of the 4 imperial princes had died. It turned out that a rivalry had formed between the first and third princes. As a result, Heinrich inherited the position of head of the Ed house. Also, a candidate for the main hero from the original story, Fabian Gold, was born. Suddenly, the main heroine addressed her sister and asked if she wasn't busy. After all, she didn't have to come to her every time like this, but her interlocutor noted that everything was fine, as she really missed Bless. She also asked if she wasn't bothering her too much. The main heroine noted that of course not.